Welcome to episode 64 of Marathon Talk, powered by Abbott World Marathon Majors. On this week's show, we'll discuss whether Jacob Kiplimo can break the London Marathon course record in his marathon debut. We'll take a look at the elite races about to go down in Tokyo. We'll highlight some notables striving for that coveted 6-star medal in Japan. And we'll hear from the star of our latest documentary, Russell Winwood, about his incredible 6-star journey. All right, let's go. Martin, good to see you again. What have you been up to?
Good to see you too, Dina. I must admit, you in your intro mentioning Russ, I spoke to Russ today. I really enjoyed his interview. I really enjoyed speaking to him. I'm going to be honest, I wasn't sure. Like hearing his story, I'd read a little bit about him and I wasn't sure. And then I watched the Abbott World Marathon Majors story about Russ and I was blown away.
Right.
I watched it and I thought, I love it. I just love it. The main thing, well, I'm going to hold it, right? I'm going to hold it. I'm not going to tell you what I thought the main thing is because it comes later in the show. Because of course I interviewed Russ and I really loved it, and you know, such a humble, passionate, compassionate guy whose running is serving him beautifully and those around him. So yeah, I hope you enjoy that when it comes up. Me, however, I'm going to have to let you in on a bit of a rather embarrassing secret, Dina.
Uh-oh.
Well, don't worry, I don't have anything like that.
I know, but I feel like you don't get embarrassed easily. So
well,
tell.
Do you know what? I really feel like I let someone down over the weekend. So it was we had a funeral to go to, and my wife and I were in separate vehicles for complex logistical reasons. It was about a 4-hour drive away, and it was Liz's nan, who was 94. You know, so we had to go to her nan's funeral, and Liz was going in one car, and I was going in another, and we stayed over the night before and we had just had to drive to this little fishing village in North Cornwall called Port Isaac, where, you know, Liz spent some time growing up, and her mum and her nan. So, you know, that was where the scattering of the ashes was. And it's a really important thing for Liz and her family to be there celebrating her nan's life. And we had to drive from Wadebridge to Port Isaac. Liz set off in her car. I set off following her. Right? Literally following her, thinking, how hard can this be? Now, here it gets difficult. I shouldn't be laughing because it's not funny, but I lost her, right? Now, I know the way to Port Isaac from Wadebridge, but I didn't want to take any risks, and it had been raining quite heavily. So I put it in sat-nav. I thought, I'm going to just follow sat-nav. What an absolute terrible mistake it was. I ended up getting taken down these North Cornwall tiny lanes. Oh, I got stuck in floodwater and I missed the whole thing. I didn't even. You
missed the scattering of her nan's ashes?
Yeah, I missed it. So I left my wife there and children and all her family. And I thought, I can't even make it to a family funeral. So
and you guys have been there because you vacation there.
I've been there loads.
Each year as well. Yeah.
I know the way. I don't know why I just didn't go there. The way I know, I was reliant on sat-nav, and it had obviously found 1 minute quicker somewhere, but took me a route that I did not want to be going down, got stuck in floodwater.
Yeah.
Ended up arriving there 45 minutes after everything had happened. So my weekend didn't go well, Dina.
No. And grief just makes you make poor decisions sometimes when you're thrown off of your routine. And so
I was not a popular husband. Should we put it that way?
Yeah, I bet. Yeah. But the ashes got spread. That was the point. And you're by your wife's side most of the time. Yes. Before and afterwards.
Yes. Sometime afterwards I was there. And I didn't get to do any running either. I normally love to run when I'm in Cornwall, but I didn't get to do that either. So then we just came home the following day. So that was
you don't want to run floodwaters anyway. You actually go out in all sorts of weather. I've talked to you when you're like navigating streams of rushing water, and it seems horrifying to me. But what was the highlight of your week? We know what put you in the doghouse, but what
I know
got
exactly
you out
what the
of the
highlight of
doghouse?
my week was. I went for a beautiful bike ride. So, I've still been running, but I also went for a beautiful bike ride. The sun was actually out for a change in the UK, so I managed to bag a few miles on the bike, which was fantastic. Now, it's been my birthday lately. It's been your birthday, but you've also had another family birthday.
Yeah, it was Piper's birthday. And although we don't go out and ski together and she doesn't run with me, we do sled together. And so I love theme parties. We had an après ski themed party after her ski team met. And we came to the lodge and had food and played games. It was super fun. I gave away fun prizes. So I love parties. I love hosting parties. But
when you say themed, Dina, let's just get to the bottom of that. Is that like, what do you mean themed? Like,
well, it's like
dinosaurs?
a ski theme.
Oh, it's a ski theme.
It was a ski theme. So her team got finished with practice. They came into the lodge and I had it all decorated and we had the prizes that were, Mammoth Mountain vintage ski posters that,
lovely.
that were framed. So it was really, really, really fun. And afterwards, her and her friends, we all went night sledding. We live right next to the chairlift. So we got a bunch of sleds and we went sledding at night. And it was so much fun. There was a lot of laughing, a lot of peeing in pants because of laughing so hard. So it was just awesome.
One day in the future, it'll probably be you're off night clubbing, not night sledding, night clubbing.
Right. Yeah. Yes. And when I say night sledding, I mean like right when the sun goes down so we could all be in bed by 8:00 at night. That's how fun I am.
Awesome.
But I will say on a fitness note for our listeners that because I live in a ski resort town, I've been cross-country skiing this season and I'm really starting to get the hang of it so I can like work hard. Like my technique is getting better. And I could tell a difference in my running. Like I feel so much stronger running because I'm also cross-country skiing. So it made me really excited to like see that bit of progress.
Awesome. Good for you.
Yeah.
Right. Well, should we move on?
We should get on to some really exciting news because the running world is full of it. Let's go.
We're going to kick off with an incredible run from Jacob Kiplimo from Uganda, who in Barcelona set an amazing new half marathon world record when he ran 56 minutes, 42 seconds. The previous world record was 57 minutes and 30 seconds. And I can remember, Dean, it wasn't that long ago when breaking 60 minutes was a big deal in the half marathon in men's elite running. Breaking 60 minutes was a big deal. Now we're seeing top 10 break 60 minutes and a 56-minute run. Incredible.
It really is incredible. When you break it down, he was running 2 minutes, 41 seconds per kilometer. That is 4 minutes and 20 seconds per mile. That is just poetry in motion. He's in rare air here, but he seems to really shine when he focuses on an event. He's a 4-time world champion in cross country. He's the Olympic bronze medalist in the 10,000 meters from Tokyo. But seeing how well he has set himself up for this London Marathon is so exciting to be debuting at the marathon distance after smashing the world record by such a big amount. Makes me really excited. Makes him the favorite, which is crazy that we're talking about the debutante in London and not the Olympic champion Tamarat Tola or the defending champion Alexander Matiso, that it's still a star-studded field with the second and third fastest men in history, Eliud Kipchoge and Kenenisa Bekele, also running. We're saying also running, which is weird. But it's
two
really
huge
setting
names
up.
That also ran.
Also running, yeah. But it really is setting up to be an exciting race in London. I can't wait.
Yeah, it's Sebastian Sauet, 2:02:05 as well. That elite field is going to be incredible. We've seen a lot in the last couple of years really how, the ways in which elite marathon running used to be. They used to train. You'd kind of race yourself into that elite marathoning. And here we're seeing a mouth-watering potential. We saw it with Kelvin Kiptum. Another mouth-watering potential of somebody with a half marathon time of 56 minutes, new world record, debuting over the marathon distance. And of course, you start to think about what might be possible. Kiptum's first split in London was 14:30 for his first 5K. His 10K split was 29:12 in London, right? Kiptum's 15K split was 43:51.
Almost a minute faster.
Yeah, well.
I mean, obviously it's a different distance. We're talking half marathon and marathon, but a minute faster shows a tremendous amount of potential.
Yeah, and the 10K distance, the 10K distance running through 29:12. Well, Kiplimo ran through 26:46. Hello, unbelievable. But you're exactly right, and like marathon listeners to this show, of whom I imagine will be most of them, will understand that just because you can run a half marathon, it does not mean that you can run a great marathon. There's a big difference between running a great half and a great marathon. But nonetheless, I'm really excited about the potential of Kiplimo and what it might be possible for him, knowing that he can run 56 minutes for the half.
Right. So the London Marathon course record is 2:01:25, and that is under serious threat with Kiplimo on the line, especially when you look at what it takes to break those records. It takes good conditions, fast courses, that is typical of London, and it takes a field of athletes all willing to go the distance, right? All just in it from the gun and working, I wouldn't say together, but not having to do all the work yourself, to be in a pack where you can kind of like mentally disengage and rest for the later fight, for the last 10K, for the last 15K. So all of those ingredients are really coming together for an exciting London marathon.
Well, knowing that you've run 56 minutes, that might lead you to a place where you think, well, I can afford to go through in 59 minutes.
Yeah, and it's going to feel more comfortable.
It's 3 minutes slower than my best, So, of course, what would you, with when you were running and you were thinking, what was that split between going through the half marathon and your half marathon best? I don't know that for you. So 2:19, but what was your half marathon best?
Was 67.
Okay, so
math. I'm not good at it.
Yeah, you do.
Someone out there better at math. Yeah.
So that would be like 70. So that would be 3 minutes, right?
Yeah.
But it's over a longer time. So he's got 3 minutes over a shorter time.
Yeah.
So the percentage of time that he has is greater. So, he's going to be thinking, should I go through in 59 minutes and be 3 minutes inside my, outside my half marathon time? Is that doable? Can I hang on for the second half? And of course, if he does, we'll be thinking, oh wow, okay, is he close to 2 hours? What does he need to do? Is that going to be in his thought process, or is he going to want to go out and bank, a safe 2:02? It'd be interesting.
Yeah, it's going to be quite a watch party there in London. But before London gets underway, Tokyo is kicking off this weekend and the fields look great. There's always some last minute withdrawals. Notably on the women's side, it is former world record holder Bridget Kosgei, who I think it might have gotten lost in translation, but it said she's in poor condition. And so I think that can be construed a lot of ways, maybe just not fit. Is that what that means? She's just not fit enough to toe the line. But the other women who are towing the line and seemingly ready to go, Sudame Kebede, the defending champion. She won last year in 2:15.15, and she was second in Chicago last year in that astonishing race in Chicago by Ruth Chepengetish when she shattered the world record. So she'll start as the favorite there, but she'll have Tigist Katima in for company. Katima won Dubai last year and then claimed her first major in Berlin. So we could see a big Ethiopian battle between those two. Exciting races on the women's side in Tokyo. And the men's race also has a defending champion coming back.
Yeah, Benson Kipruto back. He could be facing back-to-back wins. He's already got back-to-back wins, of course, so he starts as favourite. Darisa Gelata is in the field, right? And Darisa has a sub 203 PB2. Now, Gelata is one of those athletes who builds mainly a marathon profile that sits outside of the majors. You know, here we often talk about the World Marathon Majors, but unbelievably, they're not the only marathons in the world. You know, and Gelita was second in Dubai in 2003, but then went on to win Beijing later in that year. Also won in Seville in February 2024, where he ran 2:03.27, which was a new course record. Then came fifth in the Olympic Games, before then coming second in the rapid Valencia marathon, where he ran 2:02.38. Right, so you know there's a real mass of marathon experience coming together in Tokyo. There, going to be exciting. I'm sure that you know if both of them decide to go for it, we could also see a fast race in Tokyo.
Right. And it's wild to me that there's so much depth across the spring marathon. So we've got Boston and Tokyo and London, but the fields are deep and threatening. It's not like there's one standout that has everybody running for second place. So the depth of marathoning right now is so impressive. In Tokyo, the wheelchair races will get underway first before the professionals and masses. Unfortunately, no Marcel Hug and no Daniel Romanchuk. They're both nursing injuries, so the field is wide open for an Asian championship to rise to the top. Last year's champion Tomoko Suzuki will start as the man to beat. And on the women's side, Catherine De Bruyne is looking to get her series off to a good start. Manuela Schar, she's won Tokyo in the past. Madison De Rosario, these are all names you've heard us talk about before. And Susanna Scaroni. Unfortunately, Eden Rainbow Smith is out due to injury. So injured early in the season. Maybe it's because they're starting to take risks because the competition is just so deep. They have to up their game in training. And sometimes that riding that line becomes a little too fine.
There's another big milestone in Tokyo, though, Dina. There's 2,559 six-star hopefuls that are heading for the finish line on Sunday. And then, that looks like we will pass the 20,000 mark in terms of the total six-star finishers, with those 2,559 heading for the finish line on Sunday. Now, interestingly, they include 84-year-old Ivan Moreno. He raced in the 100 meters for Chile in the 1964 Tokyo Olympic Games.
What?
Yeah, so he races 100 meters. That's some range. It's taken him a while. He finishes on Sunday. He will be the joint second oldest six-star finisher. And do you want a fun fact about his Abbott World Marathon Major journey? It only started in 2017.
Oh man, what an inspiration!
Yeah. So he would have been in Berlin.
He would have been
when he was 75. Yeah,
75 years old when he started this.
Ran 3:58 as well.
So impressive. That's so impressive. And when I think of the 1964 Olympics, I can't help but think of American Billy Mills, who won in an upset race in the 10,000 meters. I love watching the footage of that race. So, but Ivan's Tokyo experience coming full circle, competing there in 1964. And then I wonder what medal he's going to covet more, because, there's a lot of people striving for, and people saying that 6-star medal is the most beautiful one in their display. So we'll have to hear from Ivan, which one shines a little brighter in his eyes.
I mean, that's a pretty amazing run, isn't it? He did the 100 meters at Tokyo Olympics. He's going to run Tokyo again in the marathon when he's 84. He's run Boston, he ran New York in 2022, he won his age group, did Chicago in 2023, London in 2024, now Tokyo in 2025, making him the oldest competitor on the day, the youngest of those 6-star hopefuls on Sunday in Tokyo. Is Brandon Ehrlich. He's from the US. He'll be 25. He's one of more than 900 runners from the USA on the 6-star hopeful list. He only started running the marathon majors in 2021 when he ran with his mum. He ran with his mum in 2021. He'll be the youngest of the 6-star finishers if he does it in Tokyo. He ran Chicago in 21, Boston in 22, Berlin 23, London and New York in 2024. And he's hoping to be the youngest finisher of the Abbott World Marathon Major 6-star list when he runs Tokyo on Sunday.
That is wonderful. I'm going to go out there and just prompt any photographer or journalist to get a picture of the two of them in that 6-star tent together. That would be so epic to see them celebrated with those 6-star medals around their neck. An interesting fact, there are currently 20 countries that have one 6-star finisher. And we're set to welcome a new country to this club with an athlete getting their medal from Benin, West. I had to look up where Benin was. It's in West Africa. It's the size, for those of you listening from the US, it is the size of the state of Pennsylvania. So a small sliver of land, but he'll be getting his 6-star in Tokyo, one of those 6-star hopefuls.
Oh,
the
wow.
country
I'm just looking at where Benin is.
Yes.
It's kind of sandwiched in between Nigeria on the one side, Burkina Faso and Togo and Ghana. Like, there's Benin right in the middle there.
Right.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Got a little bit of coast down at the bottom.
Yeah. I this is an education for all of us when we learn about these 6-star finishers from smaller countries around the world. So
shows the spread, doesn't it, of the majors?
Absolutely. Another 6-star to celebrate. So exciting.
On this episode of Marathon Talk, I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by Russ Winwood from Brisbane in Australia. Now, some of you may have heard of Russ. He's known as the COPD athlete. More about that in a moment. And Abbott World Marathon Majors have just done the magnificent story of Russ's run in Berlin, where he obtained his Abbott World Marathon Majors 6-star finish medal. He's got a span starting at 5 hours 22 and finishing very close to the cutoff at 6 hours 28 in Chicago. About a 10-year period to complete that Abbott World Marathon Majors 6-star finish. And to tell us a little bit more about it and some of the challenges that Russ has faced along the way, well, he's here with us now. Hello, Russ. Nice to have you on the show.
Great to be here, Martin. I'm a big fan of the podcast and never really thought that I'd be a guest, so it's an honour.
No, it sits with us, mate. Really, really does. I think briefly we had a conversation before we started recording, and I said how much I enjoyed the World Marathon Majors story piece, the short film, particularly about your run in Berlin. I just love the relationship that you have with your wife Leanne, with running, and actually with COPD. There's this triangle of things that seem to shape and run your life, right? So let's kick off with the COPD, right? So what is it? How does it impact your life? when did you find out that you had it?
Yeah, well, COPD is the abbreviation to chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. That mouthful, you know why we call it COPD. Uh, it's an obstructive lung disease. So what happens is your airways become obstructed. But unlike asthma, it's not a reversible obstruction. It's a fixed obstruction. So it's there all the time. So what that means for me in real life is being able to manage breathing. So I've become quite good at that. I was diagnosed 14 years ago now with this disease, and over time I've been able to manage it quite well. And one of those things is being able to talk to people and hide the fact that I'm struggling to breathe. So now I'm breathless, but you won't pick it up so much because I'm very good at hiding it. If there was a doctor or a respiratory specialist watching this, they would see the signs, but most people don't. And that's taken a long time to build up. Unknown fact that a lot of people don't know is that COPD is the third leading cause of death globally. We know of heart disease and strokes, those sorts of things, but most people don't know what COPD is. So,
And what causes? What's the? Are there multiple causes of COPD? Russ, is it a genetic condition? Is it lifestyle related? Why might
it,
why might people experience COPD?
it can be all of the above. There is a genetic version of COPD called alpha-1 antitrypsin. Most COPD is caused by environmental factors and lifestyle choices. So smoking being one, pollutants in the workplace, industrial
Yeah.
chemicals, smoke, working in an environment where there's a lot of smoke, asthma, severe asthma that's been unmanaged. That's me. So yes, I was a smoker many, many years ago, but my COPD is predominantly from unmanaged asthma for many years.
And the phenomenal thing, I think, in terms of hearing you speak is that, and knowing your story, is that running isn't necessarily, when somebody says, well, actually, I experience considerable restrictions in my lung function. I think you said, something like 30% lung function that you get 100% out of. And it's a bit like, when you run, you feel like you're suffocating. Those things don't seem to go naturally hand in hand. Yet, certainly for you, running and learning to embrace the breathlessness has helped you manage and cope with the disease.
Absolutely. And, being a running podcast, there would be many people out there, I imagine, who have either trained at altitude or they've used elevation masks in their training at some stage. And we actually use elevation masks to show people what it's like to have COPD. So if you imagine wearing an elevation mask 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, that can mimic COPD quite well. And same with altitude. You're running at altitude, the air's thinner, your oxygen levels drop. Same, that's our condition at ground level. So that's the best way of describing it. Running is hard. I'm not going to make no bones about it. I could pick a lot easier things to do, and I have done in the past. Before I started my marathon majors journey, I actually completed 3 Ironman events. And I can tell you right now that the swimming and the cycling was far easier than sticking a marathon on the end of that. But the thing is, and what I've discovered is the human body's quite adaptable. So over the years, my body has adapted to a running environment. I'm not fast, as we know, but I can get myself into a rhythm. and I can use breathing techniques where I can do a marathon. And for me, I'm not racing anyone out there. Number one priority for me is just to finish the race.
Yeah.
I do like looking at time, so being able to do a better time than what I did previously is always a goal. Um, but I'm getting older, and my disease is a progressive disease, so it doesn't get better;
Okay.
it gets worse.
And so does the very fact that, like, I'm intrigued by does the running and the opening of the airways, which is what you're doing. I guess you're challenging the constricted airways by trying to dilate them, I guess, and force more air down through them. Does that delay the onset of the progress, or is that rate of progress the same regardless of whether you run?
I guess the best.
Or do you not know?
I guess the best way to describe it, there's a lot that we don't know about people who do marathons with COPD because there's not many of us. So obviously there's not a lot of research into it. But I guess if you look at the 6-star story, you will see in part of the race where I'm making some quite strange noises.
Yeah.
And that's what we call dynamic hyperinflation. So I can use breathing techniques to delay getting to that point, but I know I'm going to get to that point. And so when I get that point, what that is that I've got all this dead air in my lungs that I can't get out. So that is absolutely suffocating. So then I have to manage my breathing correctly to get that dead air out. And so on that part of the race, I got to the point where I just need to sit down, concentrate on my breathing, get rid of that dead air so I could get going again. And, that's my life.
And you run with an oxygen machine as well. You've got a little backpack, right? So, just if you haven't watched it, we will have a link on the show notes to watch Russ's video, Russ's story, and it's phenomenal. But he carries a little backpack, and in it is a small, I think you say it weighs about 4 or 5 kilograms, a small machine that you then have a kind of tube that runs up your back and enters. That's it. Yeah, enters up here into your nose.
Yeah.
So that obviously supports the distribution of oxygen, enables you to get a little bit more into the airways. Is that what the purpose of that?
So once I start desaturating, I need supplementary oxygen to come in to fill the void, so to speak. So what that machine does is take air from outside, converts it into pure oxygen, and delivers it through the nasal cannula. To give you an idea what it's like if I'm not using that, it's just like letting the air out of your tires. You just can't do anything. And over the years I've experimented with oxygen machines and what levels I have to use, and I've had an oxygen machine many years ago fail on me while I was running, and it's like your energy is just sucked right out of you, and you can't do anything. So they are a crucial part of my races.
And marathons do that to you anyway.
They do.
So, a marathon sucks all your energy and it's really hard.
Yep.
And breathing and breathlessness is something that, if I'm working with people that are preparing for a marathon, like learning to harness their breath is something that I want them to do, because I think it teaches them real discipline about pace and helps them stay calm and relaxed. But for you, you're so in tune with your breathing because it really makes or breaks your entire run. Let's talk a little bit and dig into some of those marathons a little bit more. I think in watching your video, the striking thing, apart from the discomfort that you're facing, is it's the relationship that you and your wife Leanne have, and the way in which, she says a couple of things in that video which just really kind of drove a couple of things home for me. And the first was when you look at each other and she says, you're going to do this safely, you're going to get it done. And it feels like this mantra that you guys have for preparing and completing a run. Just tell me a little bit about what that means.
Yeah, look, Leanne is, she's my major support crew. She's my handbrake. She makes everything easy for me. You know, when I first started doing endurance events, my doctor sat me down and said, everything you do has to be done in a safe environment. So over the years, I've learned what that environment looks like, and so has Leanne, and she knows the signs when I'm in distress. She can see it on my face. But her role for a marathon is that support role to make my life easier right up leading up to the marathon. One of the things that causes, so it triggers breathlessness with patients, is anxiety and stress. So Leanne knows that. So she does everything to try and manage that stress. She will tell me, no, you're not doing this. Yes, you can do that. So we know each other. You know, we have our protocol, we have our rituals. She knows what I like to do before a race. And for me, it's up to me to reassure her that I am going to do the right thing. I am going to do things safely. Because at the end of the day, I want to finish a marathon. I want to get my 6 stars, but I want to see tomorrow too. And so everything has to be done in a safe environment. You know, when I enter these races, I have to submit my medical details to the race organisers. I have to get clearances from my doctors. And sometimes they ask a lot of questions because they don't see people with COPD with an oxygen tank on their back running marathons. And that process is largely managed by Leanne. She'll get all the information from the doctor. She'll get all the things we need, all the clearances. She'll submit that. So, you know, without her, none of this would ever have happened. You know, she has been ultra supportive from the start, and still is now. She keeps telling me, you've got to keep running because otherwise you're going to drive me crazy. So, you know, we have a good relationship all over, but our running relationship is what enables me to do what I can do.
Yeah, and it feels like, you know, the running strengthens you in so many ways, not just you, right? And helps you manage your COPD more effectively. And, you know, gives you a better quality of life. Maybe even, you know, delays the onset of the progress of the disease and, you know, gives you a longer quality of life potentially as well. So all of these things, and of course wrapped up in that is your ability to have more meaningful relationships with people around you.
Yeah.
And I think because your health status is being positively managed by the running that you're doing. So, you know, this complex triangle of you, Leanne, disease, running. I think my absolute favourite moment, Russ, in the film was when you're coming down towards the finish. I think you're about 41k into Berlin, and you can see your wife on the side, and she just shouts at you in like kind of best Aussie. She goes, "You little ripper," and you kind of run past, and you can see the joy and also the relief in that shriek.
So the background of that was that Ali had been giving her updates throughout the day about how I was going. But when the wheels started to fall off around that sort of 30, 35 kilometre mark, Ali wasn't responding to her. So there was a period of time, there was radio silence. So she was getting stressed. Yeah. He rang her and said, we're at the 41k mark. He's all good. He's going to finish. And so, you know, once she heard that, it was a relief from her because it's a stressful, very stressful day for her.
Yeah, of course. Now, in the race itself, you know, normally we go through in a marathon and we say, right, let's start this race really disciplined and controlled, and then, you know, let's work really hard, and then, you know, perhaps when you get to 20, that's when the real race starts. You've really got to knuckle down, and, you maybe you're going to dig in and drive. And I imagine, well, what's your experience? Because for you, it's, I guess, life critical that you don't do some things and that you regulate the entire race. So what does it look like for you?
Very opposite to what most people do. So every one of my races, the wheels fall off at the 30K mark. And that's because by that stage, I'm suffering hyperinflation. I have to manage that. There's a lot of things going on. So when I train, my training revolves around getting me to the 30K mark as quickly as I can, because I know after that
Right.
it's going to get ugly. So, we talk about, negative splits and all that sort of thing. It's never going to happen in my world. For me, it's about managing how I'm running for as long as possible, and then preparing for the bad times and the demons, which invariably happen from kilometre 30 to 41. Because the funny thing is, adrenaline is a big motivator. It can change how you're feeling. And I always look for that at the end of the race. I look for people to sort of give me energy because I know I'm feeling bad. And, I think that's one of the great things about the marathon majors is you get that support all the way through. So
Yeah.
it's fantastic.
And so at that 30K point, for most of us, we dread, but love it, because you think, oh, okay, now this is when it all happens. Like this is the story part of your marathon. Everything before 30K should be all right. So it's almost like that last 30K should be difficult. But for you, it sounds like it really is significantly more of a challenge. And is that largely because of the acceleration, the progression of the restriction of airway during the time? So like you get to 4 hours or so, and then you get this constriction of your airway even more, and so that radically reduces your pace and your capacity to keep moving. Is that about right? So it must also be really painful.
Yeah, that's a pretty good way of putting it. So right through the race, when I'm trying to get to 30K, I'm managing my breathing and my pace. I am a mad data nut. I know what pace I've got to stay at. I know where I've got to be at 5K,
Yeah.
10K, 20K. Because I know at 30K, my race starts to look very differently. And I get that that happens for any runner. But for me, um, it's hard work. It is really hard work, because you're trying to manage breathing and your body's not that keen on breathing anymore. It's had enough. It wants you to pull up stumps and go home,
Yeah.
because it's sick and tired of what you're doing with it. So it's managing those last 12 goes can be really, really difficult.
And does your breathing rate go up, Russ?
Yeah.
So have you done, you just said you like the data. So, do you know what your breathing rate is per minute? Do you think actually my breathing rate sits at this many breaths? When I struggle, do you breathe? Does the breathing rate go up or does it go down?
Well, tell me this. Do you know what your breathing rate would be at the 35K mark?
Well, what I know is that, so what would it be? No, I wouldn't know, but I could take a guess.
The reason being, mine will be around about 40 to 45 breaths per minute.
Yeah, so yours is certainly probably a bit higher.
And the thing is, for me, I'm using very much at that stage, my predominant breathing is what we call pursed-lip breathing. So where we're only taking small amounts of air in, but where that noise I was making is trying to get rid of that dead air out of your lungs. So your exhale is a lot longer than your inhale. Your inhale is very short, but exhale just go and go and go to try and get that dead air out. And I get to the stage where I can't run anymore. I now have to stop because I'm not getting that dead air out. So then I've got to stop
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
manage it, and I can get it under control. I know that, and it's one of the things we talk about in patient groups. Patients are scared about not being able to take that next breath. Well, you can. You've just got to manage it, and so that's what I do. The whole race is about managing breathlessness, but it's
Yeah.
critical in the last 12K.
And it's fascinating because breathing is something you take for granted until
You can't.
there's an issue. Yeah, exactly. Until you can't. Right, exactly. That's exactly it. Until you can't is such an amazing way of putting it because it's so clear. And then in a marathon, of course, your breathing is under such duress anyway. And yet you've got to have the emotional strength to understand that you have capacity to regulate your breathing, even when it's restricted by a disease, right? You still have the capacity and the ability to control your body and regulate your breathing. So just hearing you talk about the short inhalation and the long exhalation to try and expel the dead air from your lungs, it's something that the rest of us would not think about because we're busy trying to hoover as much oxygen in as quickly as we possibly can and taking it all for granted. Wow.
Yeah, and honestly, for us, trying to gulp as much air in as we can at that stage of a race, it just makes things worse. We just can't do it.
Yeah. So of the six, right? Of the six, your quickest was in London, and that was 5:22. But we said briefly that was before you started to use carry the oxygen. You were pretty close to the cutoff in Chicago and Boston. Which of the six that you've done so far has brought you the most enjoyment?
That's a hard one to answer because that they all have. I guess enjoyment versus sense of achievement. London was fantastic. Not only because of the
Right, that's because it's the best race in the world. That's why, Russ.
Well, it's funny because people say to me, "What's the best race?" So I go, "Well, they've all got different personalities, so it depends on what you like."
Yeah, absolutely.
But London, you've got characters there. The year I did it, there was a guy running next to me, and he had tambourines strapped to his knees. So when he was running, he was making this noise, which was a real novelty at the start of the race. But he was around my pace, and I can tell you at the halfway point, I wanted to lose him because I was sick of those tambourines.
Yeah.
But challenging wise, Boston was a really challenging day. 2018 was the year of the horrible weather. In all honesty, all I wanted to do that day was not get sick, was finish the race. So tick. But Berlin was a real achievement, a satisfaction for me, not only because it was my 6 star, but I was able to improve my time with oxygen by 10 minutes compared to Tokyo. And getting older and having a progressive disease, that was a real sense of achievement that I've actually gone faster, not slower. So, they were the two standout achievement sort of races, I think.
And it's interesting how you frame, you're framing like achievement. And I was not, like I think I was interested in enjoyment, and I chose that word really carefully because I didn't know how you were going to frame enjoyment of the race and what it meant, whether it was because sometimes when we do a marathon and you said that sense of achievement when you make the cutoff but only just is actually really significant and forms a part of your enjoyment when you look back, even though you were suffering. And there's an element with endurance athletes where, in a weird kind of way, learning to master suffering becomes a part of enjoying your craft, enjoying what you do. And I get a real sense of that with you.
Yeah,
Like mastering the suffering, owning the COPD gives you a sense of being alive and enjoying your life.
absolutely. It's I'm a big fan of making yourself uncomfortable. I think if you go through life being too comfortable, then you're not experiencing everything life has. And running makes me very uncomfortable. But, I reap the rewards from doing that. I've been able to, as you said before, I've been able to slow down the progression of my disease. When I was first diagnosed 14 years ago, I was told at 60 I probably wouldn't be around anymore. I would have gone through a double lung transplant. I would have had all these other things happen. But I firmly believe that running is the reason why I'm still here today and still leading what I think is a very good quality of life. Um, I've got plenty of friends, none of them have done 6 stars. And,
Yeah.
to me, that makes me normal. And, I want to be normal. I don't want people to look at me and pity me. I want people to look at me and go, this guy's getting out there. He's making the most of what he's got.
Well. Look, I see a strong, I see a strong man doing uncomfortable things. And that is testament to something I think that you said in the video. Like you said something which piqued a little question for me, and you said, "I'm grateful for having this disease," which is might seem from the outside is a strange thing for someone to say. So just explain what you mean a little bit.
Oh, for me personally, I know the first 40 odd years of my life, I was very self centered. I didn't really consider other people. I took life for granted a lot. I took my health very much for granted. I was bulletproof and I was going to be here forever. With this disease, it's very humbling. Um, and it's made me appreciate the valuable things in life, around family, but also about listening to other people and, hearing their problems. And, so I heard a saying a while back about you learn a lot more from listening than you do from talking. And it's, so true. And now I feel these days I have far more empathy for people. For me, if I see someone doing something that I don't understand, I won't call them out as being something they're not. I'm inquisitive. I want to find out, more about them. And I think for me, I wouldn't have these attributes if I didn't have COPD. Would I trade my lungs with yours? In a heartbeat. Um, but the reality is, this disease has led me to where I am now, and I think it's made me a far better person than where I was heading.
Speaking of which, where are you heading? In the video, we see you and your wife going, "That's it, no more." Yet, of course, you have got your Abbott World Marathon Major 6-star. You also live in Australia, and then that, rather amazing, but also slightly annoying. Sydney is now part of the Abbott World Marathon Majors family. So, now what does that mean for you?
Means I'm going to Sydney. And it's funny because Leanne and I talked about this after the race. And the thing is, it's not so much the marathons. I'll keep running marathons. I've entered one this year. I'll hopefully get an entry for Sydney next year. Fingers crossed. It's the stress and traveling and running. It's all the work that has to be done. And the thing is, leading into a marathon, if I'm doing it overseas, if I get sick before the race, there's no toughing it out on race day. That's it. It's over and done with. So, it's the stress around doing overseas marathons. And the fact that with the Abbott's majors, each race was one and done. If I didn't finish that race, that would be the end of my journey. So that was very stressful, knowing that every race I had to finish it. I had to get out under the cutoff.
Yeah.
It wasn't about, can I do a 3-hour marathon? Oh, I did a 3.5-hour marathon, but I've still finished the race. It's, can I actually finish the race? And, that's stressful. So I'll be back.
Of course,
I'll
this
be in
one's
Sydney.
slightly different for you because it's down the road.
Down the road.
Nah, it might be a few hours driving, but down the road. And I think also, it's going to be a celebration. Hopefully, if you're doing it next year, of your 60th year, is that right?
Yeah, that's it.
There you go, double celebration.
Yeah.
Seven World Marathon Majors and 60th year. It's going to be a banger.
And because it's in Australia, it's good. A couple of my two brothers are both runners, and they've both indicated they're keen to come down and run the race with me. So it could be a family affair. Plus Ali, who is my support runner, which we saw in the video.
Yeah.
Ali's coming over from the UK. So, potentially if all goes right and we all get entries, there'll be a group of probably half a dozen of us running together. So that would be
fantastic.
If I was going to retire from marathons, and I don't know whether I will, that would seem like a fitting way to do it.
Yeah, brilliant. I mean, Russ, thank you so much for chatting to me today about your story and the way in which you face and benefit from running. It's been an absolute pleasure. If you haven't seen Russ Winwood's COPD athlete story on the Abbott World Marathon Majors YouTube and website, we will put a link to that on the show so you can really understand what Russ does. Russ, thank you so much for joining us.
What an inspiring interview, Martin. Thank you so much for that conversation. What are you going to be up to until we meet again in a couple of weeks?
Well, I might run along the Thames because I'm going to London to do a Stormbreak piece of work, and I'm staying quite near the Thames, not near the bit of the Thames which the London Marathon is on. It's a big river, the Thames. It starts in near I want to say near Gloucester. I could have got that wrong. Oh gosh, now I'm really embarrassed.
But doesn't it cuts the country in half, right?
I was embarrassed at the beginning, and now I'm embarrassed again at the end. And I'm running along a part in Twickenham. I hope I'm going to do some work there. What else am I doing? That's probably it. That'll be the highlight of my week. Looking after my kids, going running. Basics, Dina. Basics.
So when you're running on the Thames, which direction do you go first? Do you have a direction you like to run first, or you let the wind tell you?
Yeah. However.
Yeah, go against the wind.
Just go with it.
Against the wind first is going to be my recommendation.
Sometimes when you're not at home and you're away and you go for a run, I like to keep it simple and think, well, I don't necessarily plan massively, but the river's easy to follow.
Yeah.
Of course. So I'll just probably go up one side. If there's a bridge, I'll cross it, come back down the other. If there's not, I'll just come back the way I've come.
Oh, yeah. You don't do it out and back. You try to do a loop.
Well, yeah, let's not get too imaginative. Out and back will probably do it. What about you? What are you up to?
So we have school break this coming week. So I'll have a lot of teenagers running in and out of the house and making high demands on me. But my daughter does have a couple ski competitions coming up. Each of the weekends we are that separate our next episode. So traveling to ski competitions, and my hope is to get in a good 15-mile run before this weekend's competition, because it's kind of a runless weekend. Like when I'm standing,
that's like banking your whole week because you can't run at the weekend, isn't it?
Yep. Don't do as I do.
Yeah.
Do as we say.
I can't run for 3 days. I'm going to do all my 3 days mileage in a single day before I hit the weekend.
That's exactly what I'm doing. Yep. Banking mileage.
Yeah. Great. Well, you know what, Dina? I hope you enjoy it. And everybody else out there, I hope you enjoy your runs wherever they take you.